The rancher's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't hold both babies and the milk bottle at the same time. One twin screamed in his left arm, the other squirmed against his hip, and the whole general store watched as Calder Boon, the man who'd buried his wife 3 months ago, stood there breaking apart in front of everyone. That's when a stranger's voice cut through the chaos. "Would you like me to hold one?" Nobody in Dry Creek knew it yet, but those 6 words would change everything. Before we begin, please hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the very end of this story. Comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels across the world. Calder Boon hadn't slept in 47 hours. He knew the exact count because he'd been marking time by feedings every 3 hours. 2 babies, bottles that needed warming, diapers that needed changing, and a ranch that needed running. The numbers were the only thing keeping him tethered to reality anymore. Numbers didn't ask questions. Numbers didn't look at him with pity. Numbers didn't remind him that Lydia should have been here doing this, not him. The twins were crying again. They were always crying. I know, he muttered, shifting June to his other hip while trying to keep Mira from sliding out of his left arm. Both girls had their mother's dark hair, their mother's small chin, their mother's way of scrunching up their faces before they wailed. Every time he looked at them, it was like staring into Lydia's eyes, and every time he did that, something in his chest tried to collapse. He'd made it to town somehow. The ride in had been a blur of dust and exhaustion, the wagon rattling over the road while both babies screamed from their basket. Other travelers had stared. A family in a passing buggy had actually pulled their children close, as if his grief might be contagious. Main Street stretched ahead of him now longer than it had ever seemed before. The general store sat at the far end, its windows glinting in the late morning sun. 40 yards. He could make it 40 yards. June grabbed a fistful of his shirt and yanked. Mira's crying hit a pitch that made his ears ring. "Just a few more minutes," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, just give me a few more minutes." They didn't. They never did. He pushed through the door of Anderson's general store and every head turned. Mrs. Patterson at the counter. Old Jim by the flour sacks. The Anderson twins pricing canned goods. Even Jacob Anderson himself standing behind the register with his hand frozen on the cash drawer. The silence was worse than staring. Calder forced himself to walk to the counter, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. June was wailing now, her little face red and scrunched. Mira had stopped crying, but only because she was trying to eat his collar. "Morning," Calder managed. Jacob Anderson cleared his throat. "Morning, Calder. How are you? How are things? Need milk and oats, maybe some jerky if you've got it." Sure. Let me just..." Jacob gestured vaguely toward the back room. Calder shifted June again. His arm was going numb. Everything was going numb lately. Mrs. Patterson stepped closer, her hands twisting in her apron. "Calder, dear, have you been eating? You look..." "I'm fine." "Because if you need anything the church has been talking about, maybe..." "I said I'm fine." The words came out harder than he meant them to. June startled and cried louder. Mrs. Patterson's face crumpled. She backed away, returning to her shopping, and Calder felt like the worst kind of bastard. She'd been at Lydia's funeral. She'd brought food after. She was trying to help. But he didn't want help. He wanted his wife back. Jacob returned with 2 glass bottles of milk and a small sack of oats. He set them on the counter carefully, like he was handling something fragile. Maybe he was. Maybe Calder was the fragile thing. "That'll be 60 cents, Jacob said quietly. Calder tried to reach for his pocket. Couldn't. Both hands were full of babies, and June was arching her back now, fighting against his grip. He tried to balance her on his hip while reaching for his money, but she squirmed and Mira grabbed his hair, and the milk bottles were sitting right at the edge of the counter about to fall. "Would you like me to hold one?" The voice came from behind him. soft but clear like water over stones. Calder turned. A young woman stood 3 feet away, her hands clasped in front of her plain brown dress. She had light hair pulled back in a simple knot, and her eyes gray, he thought. Or maybe blue, held something he hadn't seen in a long time. No pity. Just steadiness. I don't... His voice caught. I don't know you. Mave Hollis. I work at the boarding house. She stepped closer, her movements careful like approaching a spooked horse. I'm good with babies. Helped raise my sisters 4. June let out another shriek. Calder's arm was shaking now. Just for a minute, Mave said. So you can pay. He should say no. He should handle this himself. June lunged sideways, nearly slipping from his grip, and suddenly Mave was there, her hands gentle but firm, as she lifted the baby into her arms. The relief was immediate and shameful. His left arm hung limp at his side, blood rushing back into numb muscles. There we go, Mave murmured to June, swaying slightly. There we go, sweet girl, you're all right. And impossibly incredibly, June stopped crying. Calder stared. June never stopped crying, not for him, not for anyone. Mave was humming something low and tuneless, her hand rubbing small circles on June's back. The baby's head dropped to her shoulder, tiny fist curling into the fabric of her dress. How did you... Calder couldn't finish the sentence. She's tired, Mave said simply. They get worked up when they're tired. Jacob Anderson was watching with wide eyes. Mrs. Patterson had her hand over her mouth. Somewhere in the back of the store, someone whispered something Calder couldn't hear. He fumbled for his pocket, pulled out the coins with shaking fingers, and dropped them on the counter. 3 bounced and rolled. He didn't chase them. Keep the change, he muttered. He grabbed the milk and oats, tucking them awkwardly under one arm, while holding Mira with the other. He turned to Mave, who was still swaying, with June still humming that soft, wordless tune. I'll take her back now. Mave looked at him for a long moment. Something passed across her face, understanding maybe, or sadness, or both. Of course, she said. She transferred June back into his arms with the same gentle efficiency she'd used to take her. June immediately started fussing again, but quieter this time, more of a complaint than a scream. Thank you. Calder said the words, feeling like stones in his mouth. You're welcome. He turned and walked out of the store, his arms full, his heart empty, the whispers starting up again behind him. The ride back to the ranch was longer than the ride in. Both babies cried the whole way. Calder let them. He had nothing left to give. The Boon Ranch sat 5 miles outside Dry Creek, nestled in a valley where Lydia had once said, the sunsets turned the grass gold. She'd loved this land, had picked the spot for the house herself, drawn up the plans, planted the cottonwood tree by the porch with her own hands. Now the tree was dying. The porch was covered in dust. The house looked like something abandoned. Calder carried both babies inside, kicking the door shut behind him. The main room was a disaster, bottles on the tablecloths piled on chairs, dishes stacked in the dry sink. He'd meant to clean. He meant to do a lot of things. He laid the twins in their shared cradle, the one he'd built last winter, when Lydia's belly had finally started to show. They'd been so happy then. So stupidly, impossibly happy. Mira grabbed June's hand. They did that sometimes, reached for each other, like they knew they were part of the same miracle. Like they knew they were all each other had left of their mother. Calder's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the cradle, his breath coming in sharp, painful gasps. I can't do this, he whispered. Lydia, I can't do this. The house didn't answer. It never did. The next morning started the same way. Every morning started crying at dawn, bottles to prepare diapers, to change chores, stacking up like stones on a cairn. Calder moved through it all with mechanical precision, his mind somewhere far away. He was heating milk on the stove when he heard a horse approach. His hand went to the rifle by the door. Nobody came out here anymore. Not since Lydia died. Not since he'd made it clear he wanted to be left alone. But when he looked out the window, it wasn't a threat. It was her, the woman from the store, Mave. She was dismounting from a small bay mare, pulling something from her saddlebag. A basket. She was carrying a basket. Calder opened the door before she could knock. "What are you doing here?" She didn't flinch at his tone. "Brought you some things. Figured you might need—" "I don't need charity." "It's not charity." Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "It's being neighborly. There's stew in here still warm. Fresh milk. Some bread I baked this morning. I can provide for my family." "I'm sure you can." She held out the basket. "But maybe you don't have to do it all alone." Behind him, one of the twins started crying, then the other joined in. The sound echoed through the house like an accusation. Maeve's expression didn't change. "May I come in?" "No." "All right." She set the basket down on the porch. "I'll leave this here then. The stew's best warm, but it'll keep till tonight if you need it." She turned to go. "Why?" The word came out before he could stop it. Mave paused, looking back at him. "Why what? Why do you care? You don't know me, you don't know them." He gestured toward the crying babies. "We're nothing to you." She studied him for a long moment, her gray-blue eyes steady. "My mama died when I was 7, she said quietly. "Left my daddy with 5 kids under 10. I watched him try to do it all himself for 2 years. Watched him break himself trying." "What happened?" "Neighbors helped. Church helped. Even strangers helped." She picked up her horse's reins. He was too proud to ask, but they came anyway. And eventually he learned that accepting help isn't the same as failing. The crying inside was getting louder. Calder's hands clenched into fists. "I'm not your father." "No," Mave agreed. "But those babies in there need more than a proud man. They need a fed one. A rested one. One who can keep going." She swung up into her saddle with easy grace. "I'm not asking for anything, Mr. Boon. I'm just offering. Food today. Maybe help tomorrow. Maybe just someone to hold a baby while you take a breath." She gathered her reins. "That's all." She rode away before he could respond, her horse kicking up small clouds of dust. Calder stood on the porch for a long time, staring at the basket. Inside, the babies screamed. Finally, he picked it up and went back inside. The stew was the best thing he'd eaten in months. He fed the babies first, always the babies first, then heated up a bowl for himself. The meat was tender, the broth rich, the vegetables still holding their shape. Real food, the kind Lydia used to make. He ate standing up at the counter, shoving spoonfuls into his mouth like a starving man. Which maybe he was. He couldn't remember his last real meal. Toast, maybe. Cold beans from a can. The bread was good too, fresh and soft and still warm in the middle. When he finished, he looked at the empty bowl and felt something crack inside his chest. Not grief this time. Something worse. Gratitude. He hated it. Hated needing it. Hated that a stranger's kindness could make him feel this raw. But he couldn't deny the relief of a full stomach, the slight easing of the constant exhaustion. That night, after the babies finally fell asleep, Calder found a scrap of paper on the bottom of the basket. The writing was neat, feminine, the letters carefully formed. "You're not alone, Mr. Boon, even when it feels that way." He read it 3 times before crumpling it in his fist. Then he smoothed it out and put it in his pocket. Mave came back 2 days later. Calder saw her coming from the barn where he was trying to fix a broken fence rail while keeping one eye on the house. The babies were inside sleeping for once, and he was praying they'd stay that way for 10 more minutes. Just 10 minutes. She rode up with that same calm ease, dismounting before he could tell her to leave. "Morning," she called. "I don't need more food." "Good. I didn't bring any." She walked past him toward the house. "I'm here to help with the cleaning." "The hell you are." She stopped and turned her hands on her hips. "Mr. Boon, when's the last time you washed those dishes? That's none of your... When's the last time you swept this porch? Changed those curtains, aired out the bedding?" His jaw clenched. "I've been busy." "I know you have." Her voice softened. "That's why I'm here." "I don't want your pity." "Then it's good I'm not offering any." She climbed the porch steps. "I'm offering elbow grease and strong soap. You can accept it or not, but either way, I'm coming back tomorrow." She disappeared inside before he could argue. For a full minute, Calder just stood there, hammer in hand, fury and something else warring in his chest. Then he heard her voice drifting through the open window, soft and melodic, humming to one of the babies. The crying stopped. He dropped the hammer and went inside. Mave was at the dry sink, already working on the dishes with June balanced on her hip. The baby was watching her with wide, curious eyes, not making a sound. "You can't just..." Calder started. "She was fussing," Mave said without turning around. "Figured I'd settle her while I worked. Hope that's all right." It should have made him angry. Someone else holding his daughter, touching his things, invading his space. Instead, he felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. "Fine," he said roughly, "but I'm helping." "Good. Grab that broom." They worked in silence for the next hour. Mave washed dishes while entertaining June with silly faces and soft songs. Calder swept the floor, then moved to organizing the bottles and spare diapers that had been scattered across every surface. Mira woke up halfway through, and he changed her, fed her, walked her around the room while Mave scrubbed the counter. It was strange having someone else in the house. Strange and uncomfortable and nice. It was nice. "Your wife planted those flowers," Mave said suddenly, nodding toward the window. "The ones outside." Calder's hands tightened on Mira. "Yeah. They're dying." "I know. Want me to water them before I go?" "No." The word came out sharp, then softer. "I'll do it." Mave glanced at him, something like understanding crossing her face. "All right." They finished cleaning in silence. When the house looked almost normal again, not perfect, but better, cleaner, more like a home. Mave wiped her hands on her apron and reached for June. "I should get back to town." "Wait." Calder set Mira in the cradle. "Why are you really doing this?" Mave considered the question, shifting June in her arms. "I told you about my daddy," she said finally. "What I didn't tell you is how many people he turned away before he finally accepted help. How close he came to losing us all because he was too stubborn to admit he needed it." "I'm managing." "Are you?" She met his eyes. "Because from where I'm standing, you look about 2 days from collapse." The truth of it hit like a fist. He was exhausted. He was drowning. He was hanging on by his fingernails and pretending it was enough. "I can't..." His voice broke. He tried again. "I can't let her go." "Lydia." He nodded, unable to speak. Mave was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. "I'm not asking you to let her go. I'm asking you to let someone help keep her memory alive by keeping you and these babies healthy." She looked down at June. "She'd want that, wouldn't she?" Calder's throat closed. He turned away, staring at the wall because he couldn't look at her, and he couldn't look at the babies, and he couldn't breathe, "Mr. Boon." Mave's hand touched his shoulder, light as air. "You're allowed to accept help. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." He didn't respond. Couldn't. After a moment, she squeezed his shoulder once and stepped back. "I'll come by tomorrow," she said, "around mid-morning. If you don't want me here, just say so. But if you do..." She paused. "I'll keep coming, as long as you need." She handed June back to him and walked out, leaving him standing in the middle of his almost clean house, holding his daughter, trying not to fall apart. She came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each time she brought something: food, yes, but also practical things. Clean rags for the babies. a bar of good soap, seeds for the flower bed. Small kindnesses that didn't feel like charity because she never made a show of giving them. She just appeared, helped, and left. Slowly, impossibly, the ranch started to breathe again. Mave replanted the flowers by the porch, not replacing Lydia's, but nurturing them back to life. She taught Calder how to settle the babies when they were fussy, showed him a better way to heat the bottles so they didn't scald their mouths, helped him reorganize the house so everything he needed was in reach. "You're doing it the hard way," she said one afternoon, watching him struggle with a diaper change. "Here, fold it like this first." "I've been changing diapers for 3 months." "I know. And you've been fighting them the whole time." She demonstrated with Mira, quick and efficient. "There, see, no fighting." Calder tried it with June. It worked. "Huh," he said. Mave smiled. "Babies know when you're tense. They feed off it." "Great, so I'm making them worse." "You're learning. That's different." He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd started coming around. She had a smudge of flour on her cheek from the biscuits she'd made that morning. Her dress was simple but clean, her hair starting to escape its knot. She looked tired but happy, her eyes bright as she watched Mira grab at her fingers. "Why do you smile like that?" he asked. "Like what?" "Like they're yours." Mave's smile faltered for just a second. "I like babies, always have." "You got any of your own?" "No." Something shifted in her expression. "Never married, never had the chance." "Why not?" "Calder." She rarely used his first name. It always meant she was about to say something important. "Some of us aren't lucky enough to find what you and Lydia had." The grief came swift and sudden, a knife between his ribs. "I'm sorry," Mave said quickly. "I didn't mean—" "It's fine." He focused on June's diaper, fumbling with the pins. "You're right. We were lucky." "You still are. You have them." She nodded toward the twins. "They're pieces of her. Pieces of both of you. That's not nothing." He knew she was right, but knowing and feeling were different things. That night after Mave left, Calder sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun set over the valley. The flowers by the fence were blooming again, bright patches of color against the dust. The house behind him was clean. The babies were fed and sleeping. For the first time since Lydia died, the ranch felt less like a tomb and more like a home. He thought about the note Mave had left in that first basket, the one he still carried in his pocket, creased and worn from reading. "You're not alone." Maybe she was right about that too. 3 weeks after Mave first appeared at his door, Calder made a decision. He rode into town early, both babies bundled in the wagon, and went straight to Anderson's store. "I need flowers," he told Jacob. Jacob blinked. "Flowers?" "Good ones. The kind women like." For Lydia's grave." "No." Calder shifted his weight. "For someone else." Understanding dawned on Jacob's face, followed immediately by a knowing smile. "I see. Well, Mrs. Anderson keeps some nice roses in the back. Let me get her." 10 minutes later, Calder left the store with a small bouquet of yellow roses and the distinct feeling he'd just become the subject of town gossip. He didn't care. When Mave arrived at the ranch that afternoon, he was waiting on the porch, the flowers in hand, feeling more nervous than he had in years. She dismounted, saw the roses, and stopped. "Those are beautiful," she said carefully. "They're for you." "Mr. Boon?" "Calder. Just call me Calder." He stepped forward, holding out the flowers. "I'm not good at this, at telling people." He took a breath. "Thank you. For everything. For coming back. For not giving up on us." Mave took the roses slowly, her fingers brushing his. Her eyes were bright, maybe with tears. "You don't have to thank me." "I do, though. Because I was drowning, and you threw me a rope, and I was too proud and too stupid to see it." He looked at the house, the cleaned porch, the blooming flowers. You saved us, all three of us. Calder, let me finish. He turned back to her. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how to be alone, or how to raise two babies, or how to keep living in a house full of ghosts. But you make it bearable. You make it possible. A tear slipped down Mave's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I'm not trying to replace her, she said softly. I know. I could never replace her. I know that too. He stepped closer. But maybe that's not what this is about. Maybe it's about building something new, something different, something that honors what I had but doesn't keep me trapped in it. Mave was quiet for a long moment, holding the roses against her chest. What are you saying? She finally asked. I'm saying I want you to keep coming around, not just to help with the babies or clean the house, but because... He swallowed hard. Because I want you here. Because the ranch feels empty when you're not. Calder. Her voice wavered. That's not... I don't want to be a convenience. You're not. He caught her hand. You're the woman who saw a broken man in a general store and didn't turn away. You're the person who showed up day after day, even when I tried to push you out. You're... He struggled for the words. You're the reason I can breathe again. The tears were flowing freely now, tracking down her face in silent streams. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of being a shadow. Of always wondering if you're thinking about her when you look at me. Then let me be clear. He cupped her face gently, his thumb wiping away her tears. When I look at you, I see you. Mave Hollis. The woman who replanted flowers and taught me how to fold diapers and made me remember what hope feels like. He leaned his forehead against hers. I see you. She sobbed once, then kissed him quick and soft and tasting like salt. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. Okay, she breathed. Okay. Okay, I'll keep coming around. She laughed, shaky and bright. I'll keep coming around as long as you want me. Forever then, Calder said. I want you here forever. Inside the house, one of the babies started crying. Then the other joined in. The sound echoed across the valley, familiar and endless. But this time, Calder didn't feel that crushing weight of solitude. Because Mave squeezed his hand and said, Come on, let's go take care of our girls. Our girls. And for the first time in 3 months, Calder Boon believed that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. The word our changed everything. Calder heard it echo in his mind for days afterward, turning it over like a smooth stone in his pocket. Our girls. Mave had said it so naturally, as if the twins had always belonged to both of them, as if she'd been there since the beginning. Maybe, in a way, she had been. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mave would arrive mid-morning, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just bringing herself. She'd take one baby, while Calder handled the other, and together they'd navigate the endless cycle of feedings and changings, and the small disasters that came with caring for 2 infants who seemed determined to test every limit of human endurance. June's getting another tooth, Mave announced one morning, her finger gently probing the baby's gums. That's why she's been so fussy. Calder leaned over to look. How can you tell? Feel right here, that little bump. He touched where she indicated, and sure enough, there was a tiny hard ridge beneath the soft flesh. June grabbed his finger and tried to gnaw on it. Lydia would have known that, he said quietly. Mave's hand stilled for just a moment. Maybe, but you're learning it now. That's what matters. He looked at her, this woman who never flinched when he mentioned his dead wife, who never seemed threatened by the ghost that still haunted every corner of the house. She just acknowledged Lydia's absence, the way she acknowledged everything else, with calm acceptance and forward motion. You never get upset when I talk about her, he said. Why would I? Most women would. I'm not most women. She shifted June to her other hip. She was your wife, the mother of these babies. She's part of your story, Calder. I'd be a fool to pretend otherwise. Some people think it's easier that way, pretending. Some people are wrong. She met his eyes. You loved her. You still love her. That doesn't leave less room for other things. Hearts don't work like cups that get filled up. They stretch. He wanted to kiss her, then wanted to pull her close and tell her she was the most remarkable person he'd ever met. But Mira chose that moment to spit up all over his shirt, and the moment passed into the chaos of cleaning and changing and the mundane miracles of daily survival. Still, he thought about what she'd said. Heart stretch. He hoped she was right. That afternoon, after the babies finally went down for a nap, Calder found Mave on the porch, staring out at the valley. She'd been quieter than usual, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Something wrong? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. No, just thinking. About what? She was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap. About what people are saying. His stomach tightened. In town. Everywhere. She glanced at him. Mrs. Patterson stopped by the boarding house yesterday, asked me if it was true I was spending my days out here, alone with you. What did you tell her? That I was helping with the babies, which is the truth. But she gave me this look, like I was doing something shameful. Mave's jaw tightened. Then she said it wasn't proper for an unmarried woman to be in a widower's home without a chaperone, that people were starting to talk. Anger flared hot in Calder's chest. People can go to hell. Calder. I mean it. You've done nothing but help us. If they want to make something ugly out of kindness, that's their problem, not yours. It becomes my problem when it affects my reputation. She stood pacing to the porch rail. I work at a boarding house, Calder. I depend on people's good opinion to keep that job. If Mrs. Patterson starts spreading rumors, then I'll tell everyone the truth. Which is that I come here every day to help with your children. That we're... She trailed off, uncertainty flickering across her face. What are we exactly? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Calder stood slowly, moving to stand beside her. I don't know what to call it, he admitted. All I know is that I wake up every morning thinking about when you'll arrive, that the house feels wrong when you're not in it, that I look at you holding my daughters and I feel something I thought died with Lydia. What do you feel? Hope. The word came out rough. I feel hope. Mave's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's not enough for the gossips. Then what is... She turned to face him fully, her expression serious. You know what they want, what they expect. His heart hammered against his ribs. Mave, I'm not asking you for anything, she said quickly. I just need to know if this is real, if we're building towards something, or if I'm just filling a space until you figure out how to be alone. You're not filling a space. He caught her hands, holding them tight. You're creating a new one I didn't know I needed. But is it enough? Am I enough? You're everything. The words tumbled out before he could second-guess them. You're everything I didn't know I could have again. She searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the shadow of his grief overshadowing whatever this was between them. He let her look, let her see all of it, the love he still carried for Lydia, yes, but also the new thing growing in his chest, fragile and fierce, and entirely hers. Finally she nodded. Okay, I believe you. She squeezed his hands. But Calder, if we're going to do this, really do this, we need to do it right. I won't be your secret. I won't hide what we are. I don't want you to hide. Then what do you want? He pulled her closer until he could feel her breath on his face, until the space between them was nothing but possibility. I want you here. Every day. Not as the woman who helps with the babies, but as— He swallowed hard. As my family. As the person who belongs here with us in this house. Calder, that sounds like— I know what it sounds like. His voice dropped. And I know it's fast. I know people will say it's too soon, that I should wait, that it's disrespectful to Lydia's memory. But I also know that life is short and uncertain, and I've already lost one person I loved. I don't want to waste time pretending I don't feel what I feel. Maeve's breath hitched. What do you feel? I feel like I'm standing at the edge of something terrifying and wonderful, like I'm about to jump and I don't know if I'll fly or fall. He rested his forehead against hers. But I know I want you there when I land. She kissed him then properly. This time her hands coming up to cup his face. It was different from that first quick press of lips, deeper, more certain, full of promise and possibility. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maeve whispered, I'm scared. Me too. What if I can't be what they need? What if I'm not enough? You already are. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. You already are, and you don't even see it. Inside, one of the babies started crying. The sound should have broken the moment, should have pulled them back to reality. Instead, Maeve laughed, bright and surprised and full of joy. That's our cue, she said. Our. Calder repeated, tasting the word. Our, she confirmed. They went inside together, hands linked, and for the first time since Lydia died, the house felt like it was breathing again. The next day, Calder rode into town with a purpose. He left the twins with Maeve, something that would have been unthinkable a month ago, and headed straight for the church. Reverend Thomas was tending his small garden when Calder arrived, his sleeves rolled up, dirt under his nails. Calder, the Reverend said, straightening with a slight grimace. Didn't expect to see you. Need to talk to you about something. Of course. Come inside. They settled in the Reverend's small office, a cramped room that smelled like old paper and candle wax. Calder had been here once before planning Lydia's funeral. The memory sat heavy in his chest. What's on your mind? Reverend Thomas asked. Calder didn't believe in dancing around things. I want to marry Mave Hollis. The Reverend's eyebrows shot up. I see. That's quite sudden. Is it? She's been helping with the twins for over a month now. I've seen her nearly every day. Yes, I've heard. There was something careful in the Reverend's tone. People have mentioned it. I bet they have. Calder's jaw tightened. Let me guess what they're saying. That it's too soon. That I'm disrespecting Lydia's memory. That I'm just looking for someone to care for the babies. Are you? The question hit like a slap. Calder forced himself to breathe, to think before responding. No, he said finally. I'm looking for someone to build a life with. Someone who sees me and my daughters and doesn't run. Someone who... He stopped searching for words. Someone who makes me want to keep going. Reverend Thomas was quiet for a moment. Calder, I'm not judging you. Lord knows you've been through more than most men could bear. But I have to ask, have you given yourself time to grieve? I've had 3 months. That's not very long. It's been a lifetime. Calder leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Every day without Lydia feels like a year. Every night I lie awake wondering how I'm going to make it to morning. And then Maeve showed up and suddenly there was light again. Hope again. He met the Reverend's eyes. I'm not trying to replace my wife. I'm trying to survive losing her. Is that so wrong? No, the Reverend said softly. No, it's not wrong. Then you'll marry us. I will. But Calder. He held up a hand. You need to be prepared for the talk. People will have opinions. Some will be supportive, but others... I don't care what others think. Maybe you should. Not for yourself, but for Maeve. She's the one who'll bear the brunt of the gossip. The whispers about whether she trapped you, whether she's just after a home and security. Calder's hands clenched into fists. Anyone who knows her would know that's not true. People don't always care about truth. They care about stories. The Reverend sighed. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to prepare you. Marriage is hard enough without adding the weight of community judgment. We can handle it. Can she? The question lodged under Calder's ribs. Could Mave handle being the target of small-town gossip? Could she withstand the suspicious looks, the whispered comments, the constant scrutiny of women like Mrs. Patterson, who'd already decided she was something shameful? I'll protect her, Calder said. You can't protect her from everything. I can try. Reverend Thomas studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, if you're both certain, I'll perform the ceremony. But Calder, talk to her first. Make sure she understands what she's agreeing to. Make sure she's ready. I will. He rode back to the ranch with the Reverend's words echoing in his mind. Talk to her. Make sure she's ready. As if Mave hadn't already proven her strength 100 times over. But doubt was a persistent thing. It crept in around the edges, whispering questions he didn't want to answer. What if the Reverend was right? What if he was asking too much too soon? What if Mave agreed out of some misplaced sense of duty or obligation? He found her in the kitchen, humming as she washed dishes, both babies content in their cradle nearby. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that it made his chest ache. You're back early, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Needed to talk to you about something. Something in his tone made her turn, fully drying her hands on her apron. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He took a breath. I went to see Reverend Thomas. Her eyes widened. You what? I asked him if he'd marry us. The dish towel slipped from her fingers. For a long moment she just stared at him, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been fear. Calder, you can't just... I know I should have talked to you first. Should have asked properly. He crossed to her, taking her hands. But I needed to know if it was possible, if he'd do it. And he will, if we want him to. If we want? She laughed, but it sounded strained. Calder, this is insane. We've barely... I know. People will... I know. Your daughters need a mother, need you. He squeezed her hands. Mave, I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just asking you to think about it, to consider if this is what you want too. Of course it's what I want. The words burst out of her raw and honest. But wanting something and it being right are different things. Why can't they be the same? Because... She pulled her hands free, pacing away from him. Because you're still grieving. Because your daughters just lost their mother. Because I'm terrified of being the woman everyone whispers about, the one who swooped in before the body was cold. Stop. He caught her arm, turning her to face him. Stop repeating what other people think. What do you think? I think I'm falling in love with you. Her voice cracked. I think I look at those babies and my heart breaks because I want so badly to be their mother. I think every time I ride away from this ranch it feels like leaving home. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But I also think we're moving too fast. That we should wait. That we should give people time to adjust. How much time? 6 months. A year. 5 years. He wiped her tears away with his thumbs. Mave, I've already lost time. I've already learned that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. I don't want to waste another day pretending I don't know what I want. What if you wake up one day and realize I'm not her, that I'll never be her? You're right. You'll never be her. He said it gently but firmly. You'll be you. And that's exactly who I want. She sobbed once, pressing her face against his chest. He held her while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, the other wrapped tight around her waist. I'm so scared, she whispered. I know. So am I. What if I'm not good enough? You are. You already are. She pulled back enough to look up at him, her face blotchy and wet. If we do this, if we really do this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll tell me if you regret it. If you wake up and wish it was her instead of me. Promise you won't let resentment grow just to spare my feelings." The request cut deep, but he understood it. She needed to know she wouldn't be living in a lie. "I promise," he said. "But Mave, I need you to promise me something too." "What?" "Promise you'll stop waiting for me to realize I made a mistake. Promise you'll let yourself believe this is real." She searched his face looking for doubt. He gave her none. "I promise," she whispered. He kissed her, then soft and slow tasting salt and hope and the future they were choosing together. When they broke apart, Mave laughed, shaky but genuine. "We're really doing this. If you'll have me. If I'll—" She laughed harder. "Calder Boon, I've been yours since the moment you let me hold June in that general store." "Then marry me. Properly. In front of everyone. No hiding, no shame, no apologies." She took a shaking breath, then nodded. "Yes. Yes, okay. Let's do it." The joy that flooded through him was almost overwhelming. He picked her up and spun her around right there in the middle of the kitchen while the babies cooed from their cradle and the afternoon sun poured through the windows. When he set her down, both of them laughing, Mave said, "We should probably tell people." "Starting with who?" "Your family." "Don't have any. Lydia and the girls were it." "What about her family?" Calder's smile faded. "Her parents died before we married. She had a brother in Kansas, but they weren't close. Haven't heard from him since the funeral." "Oh." Mave bit her lip. "What about my family then? My father, my sisters? You want them here? They should know. They should—" She stopped, uncertainty crossing her face. "Unless you want it small, private." "I want whatever you want." She thought for a moment, her fingers twisting in her skirt. "Small," she decided. "Just us, the Reverend, and maybe a few witnesses. I don't want a spectacle." "That sounds perfect." They spent the rest of the evening planning in whispers while the twins dozed and the sun set fire to the western sky. They'd marry in 2 weeks, enough time to get word to Mave's family, but not so long that doubt could creep in. The ceremony would be at the church, simple and quick, followed by a small supper at the ranch. "I don't have a proper dress," Mave said at one point. "You don't need one." "Calder, I'm not getting married in a work dress." "Then we'll get you a new one, whatever you want." "I can't afford—" "I can." He caught her hand. "Let me do this, please." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but nothing fancy, just something simple and pretty. Everything you wear is pretty." She blushed, actually blushed, and Calder felt a rush of tenderness so strong it nearly knocked him over. They were going to do this. They were really going to do this. The news spread through Dry Creek faster than wildfire. Calder heard the whispers when he went into town the next day. Saw the shocked faces, the disapproving glances, the women who clutched their husbands' arms and whispered behind their hands. Mrs. Patterson cornered him outside the general store. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Are you really marrying that Hollis girl? Her name is Mave, and yes." "But Calder, it's only been 3 months." "I'm aware of how long it's been, ma'am." "People will talk." "People are already talking." He tipped his hat. "Excuse me." He walked away before she could continue, his jaw clenched tight. Inside the store, Jacob Anderson gave him a sympathetic look. "Don't mind her," Jacob said quietly. "She means well." "No, she doesn't. She means to make everyone as miserable as she is." Jacob laughed. "Fair point." He started gathering Calder's supplies. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Those babies need a mother, and Mave seems like good people." "She is. She's the best people." "Then congratulations. Truly." Jacob handed over the parcels. "And tell Mave that Mrs. Anderson wants to make her wedding cake. No charge. Consider it a gift." The kindness caught Calder off guard. Thank you. That's real kind." "We're not all gossips and busybodies." Jacob grinned. Some of us actually believe in love." Calder carried that warmth with him for the rest of the day, a small shield against the judgment and whispers. Not everyone was against them. Some people understood, but Mave felt the weight of it more acutely. "Mrs. Henderson fired me," she said when she arrived at the ranch the next morning. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice flat. "What?" "She said she couldn't have someone of questionable character working at her establishment. Said it would reflect poorly on the boarding house." Mave's laugh was bitter. "Apparently helping a widower with his children makes me a woman of questionable character." Rage burned hot in Calder's chest. "That's true in her eyes." Mave sank into a chair, looking exhausted. "It doesn't matter that we haven't done anything wrong. The appearance is enough. Then we'll marry sooner, tomorrow if we have to. That won't help. That'll just make people say we rushed because we had to." "I don't care what people say." "I do." The words burst out of her sharp and pained. "I care because it's my reputation, my livelihood, my future. And now I have nothing. No job, no income, nowhere to live, once Mrs. Henderson kicks me out. You'll live here. We're not married yet. Then we'll marry today, right now." He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Mave, I'm not going to let you suffer because of me. We'll go to the Reverend this afternoon, get it done, and then you'll move in here where you belong. People will still talk. Let them talk. As long as you're safe and provided for, I don't care what anyone says." She looked at him with something like desperation. "You say that now, but what about in a month, 6 months? When you can't go into town without whispers following you? When your daughters grow up hearing gossip about how their father married a woman who trapped him?" "Stop." He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. I chose you. Not because I was trapped, not because I needed help with the babies, not because I was desperate or lonely or trying to replace Lydia. I chose you because you're strong and kind and brave, and because I want to spend my life with you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Anyone who can't see that isn't worth our time. Calder, marry me, today, right now. Don't give Mrs. Henderson or Mrs. Patterson or anyone else the satisfaction of making you doubt this." She closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. For a moment Calder thought she might refuse, might say it was too much, too fast, too hard. Then she opened her eyes and whispered, "Okay, okay, okay. Let's get married. Today. Right now." She laughed wild and a little broken. "Let's do it before I lose my nerve." They were married 3 hours later in the church, with only Reverend Thomas Jacob and Mrs. Anderson and the twins as witnesses. Mave wore her nicest dress, the blue one with the white collar, and Calder wore his Sunday best. They spoke their vows in quiet voices, hands clasped tight while June and Mira gurgled from Mrs. Anderson's arms. When the Reverend said, "You may kiss your bride," Calder pulled Mave close and kissed her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd never known to speak. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his jacket, and when they broke apart, both of them were crying. "We did it," Mave whispered. "We did," Calder agreed. Mrs. Anderson dabbed at her eyes. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." They signed the papers, accepted congratulations, and walked out of the church into the late afternoon sun as husband and wife. The whispers would continue. The judgment wouldn't disappear overnight. But they'd face it together, and somehow that made all the difference. That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Calder found Mave standing on the porch, looking out at the stars. "You okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I think so." She leaned back against him. "It's strange. This morning I woke up alone in a boarding house, and tonight I'm married living on a ranch, a mother to 2 babies. She laughed softly. "My whole life changed in one day." "Having regrets?" "No." She turned in his arms facing him. "No regrets. Just adjusting. Take all the time you need. She touched his face, her fingers gentle. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. For fighting for this. For making me believe it was real. It is real, Mave. As real as anything I've ever known. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and Calder felt something settle in his chest. Peace. That's what it was. For the first time since Lydia died, he felt at peace. They went inside together, husband and wife, and closed the door on the watching world. Marriage didn't silence the whispers, but it did give Mave a name that carried weight. She was Mrs. Boon, now not just that Hollis girl. And while some people still looked at her sideways when she came to town, others started nodding their greetings with something close to respect. The first week was an adjustment neither of them had fully prepared for. Mave moved her few belongings into the ranch house, a trunk of clothes, some books, her mother's quilt, and suddenly the space that had felt so empty was filled with her presence. Her hairbrush on the dresser, her boots by the door, her humming in the kitchen while she cooked breakfast. Calder would catch himself staring at these small domestic details, his mind struggling to reconcile the reality of having a wife again with the grief that still lived in his bones. Some mornings he'd wake up and reach for Lydia before remembering. The guilt of that would sit heavy in his stomach all day. Mave seemed to sense these moments. She never pushed, never demanded explanations for his silences, or the way his eyes would sometimes go distant during dinner. She just waited present and patient until he found his way back to her. "You're allowed to miss her," Mave said one night as they prepared for bed. She'd seen him standing in front of Lydia's old jewelry box, his hand hovering over the closed lid. "I married you. And you loved her. Both things can be true." He turned to look at his wife, his new wife standing in the doorway in her nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked so young in that moment, so vulnerable, and yet there was a strength in her that took his breath away. "How are you so understanding about this?" "Because I knew what I was getting into." She crossed to him, taking his hand. "I knew you'd have hard days. I knew there'd be moments when the past felt more real than the present. I married you anyway." "Why?" "Because the man who misses his dead wife is the same man who will love his living one with everything he has." She squeezed his hand. "Because grief doesn't make you broken, Calder. It makes you human." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you." "Lucky for you, love isn't about deserving." They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other while the twins slept peacefully in the next room, and the night stretched out around them. The twins took to Mave faster than Calder could have hoped. Within days, they were reaching for her when they cried, settling into her arms with the ease of children who knew they were safe. June especially seemed to have claimed Mave as her own, refusing to go to sleep unless Mave was the one rocking her. "You've got a favorite," Calder teased one evening, watching Mave walk June around the room for the third time that hour. "Hush. I love them equally. Tell that to June. She's got you wrapped around her tiny finger." Mave smiled down at the baby who was finally starting to drift off. "Maybe I've got her wrapped around mine." "That's definitely true." When June was finally asleep, Mave laid her carefully in the cradle next to her sister. Mira immediately rolled toward her twin, and they ended up tangled together the way they always did, two halves of the same whole. "They do that every night," Calder said softly. "Find each other in their sleep." They were together before they were born. Makes sense they'd want to stay close. Lydia used to say they'd always have each other even when we were gone. His throat tightened. She was right about that. Mave touched his arm gently. She was right about a lot of things. They moved to the porch, leaving the door cracked so they could hear if the babies woke. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of the wildflowers Mave had been nurturing back to life. "I got a letter today," Mave said after a moment. "From my sister." "What did she say?" "That she's happy for me. That she wishes she could have been at the wedding." Mave's fingers twisted in her skirt. and that my father wants to meet you." Calder felt his stomach tighten. He'd been so focused on his own grief and adjustment that he'd barely thought about Mave's family, about the people who might have opinions about her sudden marriage to a widower with 2 infants. "Does he know about me? About Lydia? I wrote to them after we decided to marry. Told them everything." She glanced at him. "Was that wrong?" "No. No, you should tell your family the truth. They'll want to visit, my father especially. He's protective." "As he should be." Calder took her hand. "When do they want to come?" "Margaret said they were thinking next month. If that's all right with you." A month. That gave them time to settle into this new life, to figure out how to be a family before introducing outside opinions. It also gave Calder time to worry about what Mave's father would think of him, whether he'd see a man trying to build a life, or just a desperate widower who'd trapped his daughter. "It's more than all right," he said, meaning it. "This is your home now. Your family is always welcome." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, and Calder tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The trouble came on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the wedding. Calder had taken the wagon into town for supplies, leaving Mave home with the twins. It was the first time he'd gone alone since they'd married, and he'd caught the questioning looks from people who seemed to think he should be bringing his new wife to show her off. He was loading flour sacks into the wagon when he heard the voice behind him. "Heard you got yourself a new wife, Boon." He turned to find Charlie Winters leaning against the hitching post, a sneer on his face. Charlie was a ranch hand who worked for one of the bigger spreads outside town, the kind of man who spent more time drinking than working and thought it made him tough. "That's right," Calder said evenly. "That was fast. What's it been, 3 months since Lydia died?" 4. 4 months. Charlie whistled low. Must have been real broken up about it. Calder's hands clenched on the flour sack. "You got something to say it. Just seems convenient is all. Pretty young thing shows up offering to help and suddenly you're married." Charlie pushed off the post, moving closer. "Makes a man wonder what was really going on before the wedding." The implication hung in the air like poison. "Watch your mouth," Calder said quietly. "Or what? You gonna defend your wife's honor?" Charlie laughed. "Everyone knows she was spending all day at your place alone before you made it legal. People talk, Boon. Then people should mind their own damn business. Hard to mind our business when you're parading your shame through town." Charlie spat in the dirt. "Lydia wasn't even cold before you replaced her." Calder dropped the flour sack. It hit the ground with a dull thud, splitting open and spilling white powder across the dust. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and grabbed Charlie by the shirt, slamming him back against the hitching post. "You don't get to say her name," Calder growled. "You don't get to talk about my wife, either of them, like you know a damn thing about what we've been through. Get your hands off me. You want to question my choices? Fine. You want to gossip about the timing? Go ahead. But you imply that Mave is anything less than honorable, and we're going to have a real problem." Charlie's bravado faltered. Up close, without the buffer of distance and alcohol, he seemed to remember that Calder was bigger, stronger, and a lot angrier than he was. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Calder shoved him back. "And you're not the only one thinking it. But here's the truth, Charlie. Mave Hollis. Mave Boon is the best person I've ever known. She helped me when I was drowning. She saved my daughters. She gave up her job, her reputation, and her peace of mind to be part of our family. So if you or anyone else wants to make something dirty out of that, you can go straight to hell." He released Charlie and stepped back, his chest heaving. A small crowd had gathered, Mrs. Patterson, Jacob Anderson, a few other shopkeepers and townsfolk. They'd heard everything. Calder didn't care. "Anyone else have something they want to say about my wife?" he called out. Silence. Then Jacob cleared his throat. "I think Mrs. Boon is lucky to have you defending her," he said clearly. "And you're lucky to have her. Anyone with eyes can see how much she cares for those babies." "Agreed," Mrs. Anderson said, surprising everyone. She'd been one of the quieter gossips, but now she stepped forward. "I was at that wedding. I saw the way they looked at each other. That's real love, not convenience." "She lost her job because of the talk," someone else murmured. "That doesn't sound like someone looking for an easy life." The tide was turning. Not completely, there were still hard faces in the crowd. Still people who'd made up their minds and wouldn't be swayed by facts. But enough people were nodding, enough were reconsidering that Calder felt some of the rage drain away. "Thank you," he said quietly. Charlie had slunk off during the declarations of support. Calder let him go. The man wasn't worth any more of his energy. He bought new flour, loaded the wagon, and headed home with his jaw still clenched tight, and his knuckles aching from where they'd dug into Charlie's shirt. Mave knew something was wrong the moment he walked in. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Calder." She set down the baby she'd been holding and crossed to him. "You're shaking." He was. He looked down at his hands and saw they were trembling with leftover adrenaline and fury. Got into it with Charlie Winters. About what? He didn't want to tell her. Didn't want to repeat the vile insinuations, the implications about her character. But they'd promised honesty, and he wouldn't start breaking that promise now. He said some things. About us. About the timing of our marriage. Mave's face went pale. "What kind of things?" "The kind that questioned your honor." "Oh." The word came out small and wounded. She turned away, her arms wrapping around herself. "I see." "Mave?" "No, it's fine. I knew people were thinking it. She swallowed hard. "I didn't think anyone would say it to your face." "I handled it." "How?" "Slammed him against a hitching post and told him to go to hell." A startled laugh escaped her. "You what?" "I wasn't going to let him talk about you that way. About us." He moved behind her, his hands hovering near her shoulders, but not quite touching. "Mave, I don't care what people think, but I care that it hurts you." "It does hurt." Her voice cracked. "Every time I go to town, I feel their eyes on me, hear the whispers. I know what they're saying, that I'm an opportunist. That I seduced a grieving man. That I'm trying to replace a woman everyone loved." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "But the worst part is wondering if they're right. If I did take advantage. If I rushed you into something you weren't ready for." "Stop." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "You didn't take advantage of anything. I chose you. I chose this. And I'd do it again tomorrow and every day after that. But what if—" "No what ifs. No second guessing." He wiped her tears away. "We're married. We're a family. And anyone who can't accept that isn't worth our time or our tears." She pressed her face against his chest, her body shaking with quiet sobs. He held her while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, the other rubbing circles on her back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For bringing all this trouble into your life. You didn't bring trouble. You brought hope, joy, a reason to keep going." He tilted her face up. "Don't apologize for that." She nodded, still crying, and he kissed her forehead, her cheeks the tip of her nose. Slowly her breathing steadied. The tears slowed. "What did people say?" she asked finally. "After you confronted Charlie." "Some stood up for us. Jacob, Mrs. Anderson, a few others." "Mrs. Anderson, really?" "She said she was at our wedding. Saw how we looked at each other." He smiled slightly. "Said it was real love, not convenience." "That was kind of her." "It was the truth." Mave pulled back enough to really look at him. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there now. Determination, maybe, or resolve. "We can't control what people think," she said. "No, we can't. But we can control how we respond to it." "What are you saying?" I'm saying maybe we stop hiding, stop acting like we're ashamed of what we have. She took a shaky breath. Maybe we go to church on Sunday, sit in the front row, show everyone that we're not afraid. Calder studied her face. That's a lot to ask of yourself. I know, but I'm tired of feeling like I did something wrong. We didn't, Calder. We fell in love and got married. That's not a crime. No, it's not. Then let's stop acting like it is. Pride swelled in his chest, fierce and warm. This woman, his wife, was braver than anyone gave her credit for. All right, he said. Sunday, front row. We'll show them exactly who we are. She smiled through her tears. Together. Always together. Sunday came with clear skies and the kind of heat that made clothing stick to skin. Calder dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to marry both his wives, and tried not to think about the symmetry of that. Mave wore the blue dress from their wedding, her hair pinned up in a style that made her look older, more confident. The twins wore matching white gowns that Mave had sewn from an old tablecloth. They looked like small angels, all dark curls and wide eyes. Ready? Calder asked, offering Mave his arm. She took a deep breath. Ready. They walked into church as a family, Calder carrying Mira, Mave carrying June, both of them holding their heads high. The congregation fell silent as they made their way down the aisle. Every eye followed them. Every whisper paused mid-breath. They took a seat in the third row, right in the middle, where everyone could see them. Reverend Thomas caught Calder's eye from the pulpit and gave a small approving nod. The service began, hymns were sung, scripture was read, and through it all, Calder and Mave sat together shoulder to shoulder, their daughters content in their arms. When it came time for the sermon, Reverend Thomas opened his Bible and cleared his throat. Today I want to talk about judgment, he began, about how quick we are to condemn others without knowing their hearts, without understanding their struggles. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The Bible tells us in Matthew 7 verse 1, "Judge not that ye be not judged." Simple words, clear instruction, and yet how often do we ignore them? He looked out over the congregation. How often do we see someone making a choice we don't understand and assume the worst? How often do we whisper about our neighbors instead of offering them grace? Mrs. Patterson was staring very hard at her hands. I've been a minister in this town for 15 years. I've married couples, buried loved ones, baptized babies. And in all that time, I've learned one important truth. Love doesn't follow our schedules. It doesn't wait for convenient timing or community approval. It simply is. Mave's hand found Calder's, their fingers lacing together. Some of you may think 4 months isn't long enough to grieve, that a widower with infant children shouldn't remarry so soon, that a young woman who steps in to help must have ulterior motives. Reverend Thomas's voice hardened. But I was there when these two married. I saw the love between them, the commitment, the courage it took to choose each other in the face of judgment and gossip. June started fussing. Mave shifted her gently, and the baby settled. So before any of you leave this church today and return to your whispers and your assumptions, I want you to ask yourselves one question. Are you judging with God's mercy or your own pride? He closed his Bible. Because one of those things will get you into heaven, the other won't. The silence that followed was profound. After the service, several people approached them. Some offered genuine congratulations. Others gave stiff, obligatory smiles. A few avoided them entirely, sweeping past with their noses in the air. But Jacob and Mrs. Anderson walked right up to Mave and pulled her into a hug. That took guts, Mrs. Anderson said. Coming here today. Felt necessary, Mave replied. Well, you looked beautiful, both of you. She touched June's cheek. And these little ones are growing so fast. Getting bigger every day, Calder agreed. They made small talk for a few minutes before the Andersons excused themselves. Other people followed, some warm, some cautious, all of them reassessing their earlier judgments. Mrs. Patterson approached last, her hands twisting in her shawl. Mrs. Boon, she said stiffly. Mr. Boon. Mrs. Patterson, Mave replied, her voice carefully neutral. I wanted to. That is, I feel I should. The older woman struggled with her words. Finally, she sighed. I'm sorry. For the things I said. The assumptions I made. Mave blinked in surprise. Oh. Reverend Thomas was right. I let gossip cloud my judgment. Mrs. Patterson looked at the twins. You're doing a fine job with these babies. Anyone can see that. And if Mr. Boon chose you well, he's always been a good judge of character. It wasn't a full apology. There were still edges of judgment in her tone, still implications that Mave had been assessed and found barely acceptable. But it was more than Calder had expected. Thank you, Mave said quietly. That means a lot. Mrs. Patterson nodded and hurried away, probably to process the fact that she'd just apologized to someone she'd been happily maligning for weeks. As they walked back to the wagon, June babbling in Mave's arms and Mira pulling at Calder's beard, Mave started laughing. What's funny? Calder asked. Did you see her face? She looked like those words physically hurt to say. Probably did. Good. Mave's eyes sparkled with mischief. Let her suffer a little. She earned it. Calder laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time he'd laughed like that? Before Lydia died, certainly. Maybe not since. You're something else, you know that, he said. Is that a compliment? The highest one I know. She grinned at him, and in that moment, standing in the churchyard with his wife and daughters, Calder felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Happiness. Real, uncomplicated happiness. That evening, after the twins were asleep and the dishes were washed, Calder found a letter on the table. It was addressed to him in handwriting he didn't recognize. What's this? He asked Mave. Open it. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper. The letter was from Lydia's brother Thomas, written from Kansas. Dear Calder, I heard through mutual acquaintances that you've remarried. I wanted to write and tell you I'm happy for you. Lydia would have wanted you to find happiness again. She loved you too much to want you to spend your life alone. I know she would have loved those babies with everything she had, and I'm glad they have someone to give them that love now. My wife and I hope to visit in the fall to meet the twins and your new wife. Until then, know that you have my blessing and my support. Your brother Thomas. Calder read the letter 3 times, his throat tight. He approves, he said finally. That's good, isn't it? It's more than good. It's... He struggled for words. It's permission I didn't know I needed. Mave moved to stand behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist, her cheek pressed against his back. You don't need anyone's permission to be happy, she said softly. I know, but it helps. Having someone who knew her, who loved her, say that it's okay to move forward. He turned in her arms, pulling her close. It helps. They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, while outside, the night settled over the ranch and the future stretched out before them, uncertain but no longer terrifying. I love you, Calder said. The words felt strange and right all at once. Mave pulled back to look at him, her eyes wide. You do. I do. I know I should have said it before, should have told you every day since we married, but I love you too. She laughed, bright and surprised. I've loved you since you let me hold June in that store, since you looked at me like I'd just performed a miracle. You did perform a miracle. You brought us back to life. She kissed him, then deep and sure, and Calder kissed her back with everything he had. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mave whispered, Take me to bed. The babies are asleep, and we're married. She smiled. I think we're allowed. He swept her up in his arms, making her squeal with laughter, and carried her to the bedroom. Their bedroom now, the place where they'd build a life together, one night at a time. Outside, the wind carried the scent of wildflowers, and the stars burned bright in the endless sky, and somewhere in the darkness, The future was waiting. But tonight, Calder Boon had everything he needed right here in his arms. The morning came too fast, pulling Calder from sleep with the sound of June's crying. He reached across the bed instinctively, his hand finding warm skin instead of empty sheets. Mave was still there, still real, her hair spread across the pillow like spilled honey in the early light. She stirred at the crying, her eyes opening slowly. "I'll get her." "No, stay." He kissed her forehead. "I've got this one." He padded barefoot to the cradle, lifting June into his arms. She was soaked through, her face red and angry. Mira was starting to fuss too, working herself up to a proper wail. All right, he murmured. "Let's get you two sorted." By the time he had both babies changed and settled, Mave had appeared in the doorway wearing his shirt, the hem falling to her knees. She looked soft and sleepy, and entirely his, and something in Calder's chest squeezed tight at the sight. "You're wearing my clothes," he said. Mine were on the floor. This was closer. She moved to take Mira from him. "Besides, it smells like you." "Is that good or bad?" "Good." She pressed her nose to the fabric. "Very good." They prepared bottles together, moving around each other in the small kitchen with an ease that came from weeks of practice. June gulped her milk down greedily, while Mira took her time, pausing every few swallows to look around as if making sure nothing had changed. "She's always been the careful one," Mave observed. "Gets that from Lydia. She never made a decision without thinking it through 3 times. He caught himself tensing. "Sorry, Don't apologize." Mave shifted Mira to her shoulder for burping. "I want to hear about her, about what she was like." "You do?" "Of course. She's part of them." She nodded at the twins. "Part of you? I want to know the woman who came before me." Calder studied his wife's face, looking for jealousy or discomfort. He found only genuine curiosity, and something that looked like respect. "She was methodical," he said slowly. "Everything had to be planned, organized. She kept lists for everything, what to plant, what to buy, what to name the babies before they were born." He smiled at the memory. "Drove me crazy sometimes, all that planning. But it made her feel safe, like she could control the chaos. What happened when things didn't go according to plan? She'd panic for about 5 minutes, then make a new plan." His throat tightened. "Except the fever. She couldn't plan her way out of that." Mave was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry you lost her." "Me too." He looked down at June, who'd finished her bottle and was starting to doze. "But I'm grateful for what she left me, for them, and for the fact that her careful planning meant everything was in order when she died. Deed to the ranch savings account, even a letter telling me to find someone else, to not be alone." "She wrote you a letter." "Found it a week after the funeral. She must have written it when she realized how sick she was." He swallowed hard. "She said she wanted me to be happy, that she wanted the girls to have a mother who could watch them grow up. She gave me permission to move on. And yet you still felt guilty when you met me. Permission and feelings are different things." "They are." Mave stood carrying Mira to the window where morning light streamed through. "But maybe feelings can catch up to permission given time. Maybe they already have." She turned to look at him, and the softness in her expression made his heart ache. "I hope so," she said quietly. The rest of the morning passed in comfortable routine. Breakfast, cleaning, tending to the endless needs of 2 6-month-old babies. Around midday, a rider approached. Calder recognized the horse before he recognized the man. It was Doc Harrison, the physician who'd tended to Lydia in her final days. "Doc," Calder greeted him from the porch. "Something wrong?" "Just making rounds, checking on folks." Doc Harrison dismounted stiffly. He was an older man, his hair more gray than black, but his eyes were still sharp. "Heard you'd remarried. Thought I'd stop by and see how everyone's doing." "We're doing fine." "Mind if I check the twins, just to make sure they're healthy?" Calder hesitated, then nodded. "Come on in. Mave was in the main room with the babies when they entered. She stood quickly smoothing her skirt, her shoulders tensing. "Mrs. Boon," Doc Harrison said warmly. "I'm pleased to meet you. I'm Doc Harrison." "I know who you are." Her voice was carefully polite. "You tried to save Lydia." "I did, though I'm afraid my efforts weren't enough." He set his medical bag on the table. "May I examine the little ones?" "Of course." Calder watched as the doctor examined each baby thoroughly, checking their eyes, ears, listening to their hearts, testing their reflexes. June squirmed and complained. Mira watched with solemn curiosity. "They're in excellent health," Doc Harrison announced finally. "Both of them. Strong lungs, good weight, developing right on schedule." He smiled at Mave. "You're doing a fine job with them, Mrs. Boon." "Thank you." "And how are you doing adjusting well to motherhood?" Something flickered across Mave's face. Uncertainty maybe, or defensiveness. "I'm not their mother. Their mother died." "You're raising them, feeding them, caring for them, loving them." Doc Harrison packed up his instruments. "That makes you their mother in every way that matters." "But, Mrs. Boon, I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. I've seen all kinds of families. Blood doesn't make you a parent. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up every day and doing the hard work does." He touched her shoulder gently. "These girls are lucky to have you." Maeve's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, but Calder saw them, saw the way the doctor's words had cracked something open inside her. "Thank you," she whispered. After Doc Harrison left, Mave disappeared onto the porch. Calder gave her a few minutes, then followed. She was standing at the rail, her arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the valley. "You all right?" he asked. "I don't know." She didn't look at him. "Am I their mother, Calder? You're raising them." "That's not what I asked." He moved to stand beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Lydia gave birth to them. She carried them, brought them into this world. That makes her their mother in a way no one can replace." Maeve's shoulders slumped. "But," Calder continued, "you're the one teaching them to smile. You're the one they reach for when they're scared. You're the one who'll be there for every milestone, every skinned knee, every heartbreak." He took her hand. "So yes, you're their mother too, just a different kind." "I'm terrified I'm not enough, that I'll fail them somehow." "Join the club. Every parent feels that way." "But they're not mine. Not really. What if they grow up resenting me, wishing I was her? Then we'll deal with it together." He pulled her against his chest. "Mave, there's no guidebook for this. We're making it up as we go. But I know one thing for certain. Those girls are better off with you in their lives than without you." She pressed her face against his shirt. Her breath warmed through the fabric. "What if I mess them up? Then they'll be messed up with love, which is better than most people get." A laugh escaped her, watery and surprised. "That's a terrible philosophy." "It's the only one I've got." They stood there together, the sun warm on their backs, the sound of the twins babbling inside drifting through the open door. After a while, Mave pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I want to plant a garden," she said suddenly. "A garden. A proper one. Vegetables, herbs, maybe some berries. Something the girls can help with when they're older." She looked at him. "Something that's ours. Not Lydia's flowers or her plans. Ours." Understanding dawned. She needed to make her mark on this place, to create something that wasn't shadowed by the woman who came before. "Then we'll plant a garden," Calder said. "Wherever you want it." Her smile was like sunrise. "Really? Really? This is your home now, Mave. Make it yours." She kissed him, then quick and grateful, before heading back inside to check on the babies. Calder stayed on the porch a moment longer, thinking about gardens and mothers and the different ways people build families. 2 weeks later, a telegram arrived. Mave's father and sister were coming to visit, arriving on the afternoon train in 3 days. Mave spent those 3 days in a state of controlled panic. She cleaned the house twice, cooked enough food to feed an army, and changed her dress 4 times the morning they were due to arrive. "They're going to love you," Calder assured her. "You don't know that." "I know you, and anyone who raised someone like you must be good people." "My father is protective, stubborn. He's going to ask you 1,000 questions." "Let him, I've got nothing to hide." "And Margaret, my sister, she's going to want to know everything. Every detail. She won't stop until she's satisfied you're treating me right." "I am treating you right." "I know, but she doesn't know that yet." Mave twisted her hands together. "What if they don't approve? What if they think I made a mistake? Then they're wrong." He caught her hands, stilling them. "Mave, we're already married, already a family. They can approve or not, but it won't change what we are." "It would be easier if they approved." "Most things in life would be easier. Doesn't mean we get to choose." She leaned against him, some of the tension draining from her shoulders. "When did you get so wise?" "When I married you." The train arrived on time, belching steam and coal smoke as it pulled into the station. Calder stood beside Mave June on his hip, while Mave held Mira. His other hand rested on the small of her back, a silent message of support. 2 figures emerged from the passenger car. The man was tall and weathered, his face lined with years of hard work and harder decisions. The woman beside him was younger, with Mave's same light hair and delicate features, though her face was rounder, her eyes darker. "Papa!" Mave called out, her voice breaking slightly. "Margaret!" They crossed the platform in a rush of embraces and exclamations. Mave was crying, laughing, trying to introduce everyone at once. Her father, William Hollis, held her tight, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Let me look at you," he said, holding her at arm's length. "You're too thin. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Papa." "And these must be the babies." Margaret reached for Mira, cooing. "Oh, they're beautiful. Look at those eyes." William turned his attention to Calder, his expression shifting from warm to assessing in an instant. He held out his hand. "Mr. Boon?" "Mr. Hollis." Calder shook it firmly. "It's good to finally meet you." "Is it?" William's grip was strong, testing. "My daughter writes that you married in quite a hurry." "Papa," Mave said sharply. "It's all right." Calder met the older man's gaze steadily. "You're right. It was fast. But it was also right. For who you or her. For all of us." William held his stare a moment longer, then grunted. "We'll see about that." The ride back to the ranch was tense. Margaret kept up a steady stream of chatter, asking about the babies, the house, the town. Mave answered mechanically, her eyes darting to her father's stern profile. William said nothing until they reached the ranch. Then he climbed down from the wagon and looked around slowly, taking in the repaired fences, the tidy yard, the flowers blooming by the porch. "Your first wife plant those?" he asked. "She did," Calder said. "Mave's been keeping them alive." "That's so." William walked toward the house. "Mind if I have a look around?" "Papa, you just got here?" "I want to see where my daughter's living." He turned to Calder. "That a problem?" "No, sir. Look around all you want." William disappeared inside. Margaret gave Mave's hand a squeeze. "He's just worried," she said quietly. "You know how he gets. He thinks I made a mistake. He thinks you rushed into something. There's a difference." Margaret looked at Calder. "No offense." "None taken." They followed William inside. He was standing in the main room, examining everything with a critical eye. The clean floors, the organized shelves, the cradle by the window. His gaze landed on a framed photograph on the mantel, Lydia on her wedding day, smiling at the camera. "Your first wife," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Pretty girl. How'd she die?" Fever, 3 weeks after the twins were born. William picked up the photograph, studying it. Must have been hard, losing her like that. Hardest thing I've ever been through. And my daughter showed up to help. She did. Then you married her. I did? William set the photograph down carefully. You love her. The question hung in the air. Margaret and Mave both froze, waiting. Calder didn't hesitate. Yes, sir, I do. You using her to take care of your children, keep your house? No. You planning to leave her when someone better comes along? There is no one better. Calder's voice was hard now. Your daughter saved my life, saved my daughter's lives. She gave up her job, her reputation, everything she had to be part of this family. So no, I'm not using her. I'm thanking God every day that she chose me. William stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly his expression softened. Good answer. He clapped Calder on the shoulder. But if you ever hurt her, I'll come back here and we'll have a different conversation. Understood. Papa. Mave's face was red. You can't just threaten my husband. I can, and I did. William pulled her into a hug. You did good, girl. He's rough around the edges, but he's got a good heart. I can see that. You can. I can see how he looks at you, like you hung the moon. He kissed her forehead. That's all a father can ask for. Mave burst into tears, clinging to her father. Margaret joined the embrace, all three of them wrapped together. Calder stood back, giving them space, June still balanced on his hip. The baby grabbed his collar and yanked, pulling his attention down to her curious face. Yeah, he murmured to her. That's your grandpa. Better get used to him. Dinner that night was loud and chaotic in the best way. Margaret couldn't stop asking questions about the babies, about the ranch, about how Calder and Mave had met. William regaled them with stories from Mave's childhood, the time she tried to train a wild rabbit, the way she'd organized her younger siblings like a general commanding troops. She always was bossy, Margaret said fondly. I was not bossy. I was organized. You made us march in formation to school. Because you kept wandering off. Calder listened to them bicker with a smile. This was what Mave had grown up with, this warmth, this easy affection. No wonder she'd been so determined to bring it to his broken family. After dinner, while Margaret helped clean up, William pulled Calder onto the porch. You got a cigar? The older man asked. Gave them up when the babies came. Smoke bothers them. Smart. William leaned against the rail. So, you plan on having more children? That's between me and Mave. Fair enough. He was quiet for a moment. Her mother died young too. Childbirth complications with the last one. Mave was 17 when it happened. Calder felt his stomach drop. I didn't know that. She doesn't talk about it much, but it's part of why she's so good with babies. She raised her youngest siblings after her mother passed. William's voice was rough. Gave up her own chance at a normal life to keep the family together. By the time the youngest was grown, she was too old to be considered prime marriage material, at least in most men's eyes. She's 24. That's not old. In a small town where most girls marry at 18, it is. William looked at him. Point is, she spent her whole life taking care of other people. Never had anyone take care of her. I take care of her. Do you? Or do you just let her take care of everyone else? The question stung because it hit too close to truth. Calder thought about all the ways Mave gave, cooking, cleaning, caring for the twins, managing the household. What did he give her in return, besides a home and a name? I'm trying, he said finally. Try harder. William's voice was firm but not unkind. She deserves someone who sees her, who makes sure she's not just surviving, but thriving. I do see her. Then prove it, every day. Don't let her disappear into being just a wife and mother. She's more than that. Calder nodded slowly. You're right. Course I'm right. I'm her father. William straightened. Now, when do I get to hold those grandbabies? They went back inside to find Margaret had both twins in her lap, making them giggle with silly faces. Mave was watching with tears in her eyes, her expression so tender it made Calder's chest ache. This was what she'd been missing. Family, connection. People who knew her history and loved her anyway. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, kissing the top of her head. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For bringing them here. For letting me be part of this." She turned in his arms, confusion on her face. "Calder, you're my husband. You're already part of this." "I know, but I also know how hard it must have been, introducing me to them, worrying about what they'd think. It was terrifying. You did it anyway. Because I love you. Because I wanted them to know the man I married." She touched his face. "And because I wanted you to know where I come from, who made me. They did a damn good job." She laughed and pulled him down for a kiss, not caring that her family was watching. When they broke apart, Margaret was grinning. "About time you two showed some affection," she said. "I was starting to think you'd married for convenience." "Margaret." Maeve's face flamed. "What I'm just saying, it's good to see you happy, both of you." William cleared his throat. "All right, enough of that. Someone hand me a baby before I get all sentimental." They stayed up late that night, talking and laughing, while the twins dozed in various laps. Calder learned about Maeve's childhood, about the scrappy, determined girl who'd held her family together through sheer force of will. He saw the pride in her father's eyes, the love in her sister's teasing, and he understood, maybe for the first time, just how much strength it had taken for Mave to leave all this behind and build a new life with him. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Calder found Mave sitting on the porch steps, looking up at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling beside her. "Too much excitement." She leaned against him. "It's good to have them here. They love you a lot. I love them too. I didn't realize how much I'd missed them until they showed up. Your father's a good man." "He is. Gruff but good," she smiled. "He likes you, you know. He threatened to come back and hurt me if I ever hurt you. That means he likes you. If he didn't care, he wouldn't bother with threats." Calder laughed quietly. "What about Margaret? What's her verdict?" "She thinks you're handsome and brooding. She said you have tragic hero energy, whatever that means." "Is that good?" "According to her, very good." Mave turned to look at him. "They approve, Calder, both of them. You can stop worrying now." "I wasn't worried." "You've been tense all day." "Maybe a little worried." He pulled her closer. "I just wanted them to see what I see. How remarkable you are. How lucky I am." "I think they saw." She kissed his jaw. "Papa said you look at me like I hung the moon." "You did. As far as I'm concerned, you did." She laughed, bright and happy, and Calder thought about William's words. Make sure she's thriving, not just surviving. He made a silent promise to himself right then he'd do better. He'd make sure Mave knew every day that she wasn't just the woman who saved him. She was the woman who made him want to be saved. They sat together in the darkness, listening to the night sounds wrapped in each other, and the knowledge that somehow, against all odds, they'd built something worth keeping. Inside, through the open window, they could hear William's snoring and the soft sounds of the twins sleeping. Family noises, home noises, the sounds of a life being lived, not just survived. And for the first time since Lydia died, Calder felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be more than all right. It was going to be good. William and Margaret stayed for a week, and by the time they left the ranch, felt different. Fuller somehow, as if their presence had expanded the walls and filled the empty spaces with possibility. Mave cried when she hugged them goodbye at the station, holding on to her father like she was 17 again and afraid of being left alone. "You write to me," William ordered gruffly. "Every week. I want to know how you're doing." "I will, Papa." "And if he gives you any trouble," he shot a look at Calder, "you'll come back and have a conversation with me, I know." Calder shifted June to his other arm. But you won't need to. See that I don't. William's expression softened as he turned back to Mave. I'm proud of you, girl. You've built yourself a good life here. Thank you, Papa. Margaret hugged Mave fiercely, whispering something in her ear that made Mave laugh through her tears. Then she turned to Calder and poked him in the chest. Take care of my sister. Always. I mean really take care of her. Make her happy. Make her laugh. Don't let her spend all her time working. I'll do my best. Your best better be good enough. But she was smiling as she said it. And bring those babies to visit us. I want to see them grow up. We will. They boarded the train, and Mave stood on the platform, waving until the train disappeared around the bend. Only then did she let her shoulders slump, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. You all right? Calder asked. I'm good, just tired. She took Mira from him, pressing her face against the baby's soft hair. It was wonderful having them here. But it's also wonderful having our home back to just us. Our home, Calder repeated. I like the sound of that. They walked back to the wagon together, and Calder realized that's exactly what it had become. Not his house that Mave lived in, but their home that they'd built together. The distinction mattered more than he'd expected. That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Mave pulled out a small wooden box from her trunk. Inside were seeds, vegetables, herbs, flowers carefully labeled in her neat handwriting. For the garden, she explained. Margaret brought them, said every home needs something growing in it. She's right. Calder examined the packets. Where do you want to plant it? Behind the house, where the sun hits in the morning, but there's shade in the afternoon. She looked up at him. Is that all right? Mave, you don't have to ask my permission for everything. This is your home too. I know, but it's still strange sometimes, making decisions about a place that was yours and Lydia's first. He set the seeds down and took her hands. Listen to me. Lydia's gone. And while I'll always love what we had, this ranch isn't a shrine to her memory. It's a living, breathing place that needs to change and grow. He squeezed her fingers. Plant your garden wherever you want. Paint the walls a different color. Rearrange the furniture. Make this place ours, not just mine. You mean that? Every word. She kissed him, then slow and deep, her hands sliding up to cup his face. When they broke apart, she was smiling. I want to paint the kitchen yellow, she said. Bright, happy yellow. Then we'll paint it yellow. And I want to get chickens. Fresh eggs would be good for the babies. Chickens it is. And maybe, she hesitated, maybe we could take down some of the heavier curtains, let more light in. Whatever you want, Mave. Whatever makes this feel like home to you. She hugged him tight, her face pressed against his chest. I love you. I love you too. They started the garden the next morning. Calder dug the rows while Mave followed behind with the seeds, both babies watching from a blanket in the shade. It was hard work in the summer heat, but satisfying. Every handful of dirt, every seed planted felt like a promise, like they were putting down roots that would outlast them both. What are you planting there? Calder asked, watching Mave place seeds with careful precision. Tomatoes. And over there will be beans. Then squash, carrots, maybe some lettuce if it's not too hot. You've got it all planned out. Someone in this family has to. She grinned at him. Besides, I learned from the best. My mother always said a good garden was worth more than gold. Smart woman. She was. Mave's expression grew distant. I wish she could have met you, met the girls. Tell me about her. So Mave did. While they worked, she talked about her mother, a small, fierce woman who'd raised 7 children and still found time to tend her garden, bake bread, and sing in the church choir. She talked about the way her mother had died sudden and terrible, leaving a hole in their family that never quite healed. Papa tried his best, Mave said, her hands working steadily. But he was lost without her. We all were. That's when I learned that you can love someone and still need them to come back. That grief and anger can exist in the same space. You were angry she died. Furious, for months. She sat back on her heels, dirt on her hands, and determination on her face. I was 17, and suddenly responsible for 4 younger siblings. No time to grieve, no time to be angry, no time to be anything but strong. She looked at him. That's why I understood you, why I didn't push. Because I knew what it was like to not have space to feel what you're feeling. Calder's throat tightened. I never thanked you for that. You didn't need to. I do, though. You gave me space to grieve while still pulling me forward. That's... He struggled for words. That's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me. She reached across the garden bed and took his hand, dirt and all. We saved each other, Calder. That's what love does. They finished planting as the sun climbed higher, then washed up and spent the afternoon playing with the twins. June was trying to crawl now, rocking back and forth on her hands and knees with single-minded determination. Mira was content to sit and observe, her solemn eyes tracking everything. They're so different, Mave observed, even though they're twins. June's got Lydia's drive. Once she decides she wants something, nothing stops her. And Mira? She's more like me, cautious, thinking everything through before acting. Then God help us when they're teenagers. Calder laughed, imagining it. 2 girls, stubborn and smart, navigating the world with all the confidence of children who'd been loved unconditionally. It was a good future to imagine, a hopeful one. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Calder made a decision. I want to do something, he said. What kind of something? Something for you. Something that's not about the babies, or the ranch, or anyone else. Just you. Mave tilted her head. What did you have in mind? I don't know yet. That's why I'm asking. What do you want, Mave, just for yourself? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the porch rail. I've never really thought about it. Think about it now. I want... She stopped, started again. I want to learn to ride better. Really ride, not just get from town to the ranch. I can teach you that. And I want books. Real books, not just the Bible and almanacs. Stories, adventures. Things that take me out of my own head. We'll order you a whole library if you want. And I want... Her voice dropped. I want to not feel guilty for wanting things. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Who made you feel guilty? Calder asked quietly. Everyone. No one. Myself. She shook her head. I spent so long taking care of other people that wanting something just for me felt selfish. Still does sometimes. It's not selfish. It's human. He turned her to face him. You're allowed to want things, Mave. You're allowed to take up space and have dreams and be more than just someone's wife or mother or caretaker. I know that in my head. Then let's make your heart believe it. He stood, pulling her up with him. Starting tomorrow, we're going to make time for the things you want. Every day. Even if it's just 30 minutes. Calder, I can't. You can. You will. He kissed her forehead. Your father was right. I need to make sure you're not just surviving, and that starts with giving you space to be yourself. She looked up at him with shining eyes. How did I get so lucky? I'm the lucky one. You just don't see it yet. The next morning, Calder saddled 2 horses. His big gelding and a smaller mare they'd bought for Mave when she'd moved in, but that she'd barely ridden. What are you doing? Mave asked, coming out of the house with Mira on her hip. Teaching you to ride. Mrs. Anderson said she'd watch the twins for a few hours. Calder, I can't just leave. You can, and you will. He took Mira from her. Go get ready. Wear something you can move in. She hesitated, then nodded. 20 minutes later, they were riding out across the valley, Mave's nervous laughter mixing with the sound of hoofbeats. Calder taught her how to sit properly, how to communicate with the horse, how to move with the animal instead of against it. By the end of the morning, she was cantering, her face flushed with exertion and joy. "This is incredible," she shouted. "You're a natural." They rode until the sun was high, then walked the horses back to cool them down. Mave couldn't stop talking about it, how free she'd felt, how powerful, how alive. "We're doing this again tomorrow," she declared. "Absolutely." And they did. Every morning for a week they rode together while Mrs. Anderson, or occasionally Margaret Patterson, watched the twins. Mave grew more confident with each ride, her seat improving, her connection with the horse strengthening. The books arrived next. Calder had ordered a dozen from a catalog: novels, poetry, histories, adventures. Mave cried when she opened the package, running her hands over the leather covers like they were precious treasures. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's not enough." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Read them all. Then we'll order more." She did read them often late at night when the twins were asleep and the house was quiet. Calder would find her curled in a chair, lamplight catching on her hair, completely absorbed in whatever story had captured her imagination. He'd watch her for a moment before pulling her to bed, and she'd come willingly, bookmarked and set aside for tomorrow. The weeks passed in a blur of new routines and small joys. The garden grew, sending up green shoots that promised food and beauty. The twins got bigger, June finally mastering crawling, and Mira discovering her voice in a series of delighted shrieks. Mave bloomed too, growing into her role as wife and mother with increasing confidence. But it was the small moments that Calder treasured most. Mave humming while she cooked. The way she'd rest her hand on his back when she passed behind him. The sound of her reading to the twins, her voice soft and melodic. The way she'd look at him sometimes, like he was something precious. One evening in late summer, they were sitting on the porch after dinner, when Mave suddenly gasped. "What's wrong?" Calder asked, immediately alert. "Nothing's wrong. I just realized something." She turned to him, her eyes bright. "I'm happy, truly deeply happy. When's the last time I could say that?" "When?" "Never. Or at least not since I was a child." She laughed, the sound full of wonder. "I didn't think I could be. After everything with my mother and raising my siblings and feeling like I'd missed my chance at a normal life. But I am. I'm happy." Calder pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "Good. That's all I want. For you to be happy." "I want that for you too." "I am. More than I thought possible." She kissed him long and sweet, and Calder felt gratitude swell in his chest. For this woman who'd saved him, for the life they'd built, for the future stretching out ahead of them, uncertain but no longer terrifying. Inside, one of the twins started crying. Then the other joined in, their voices rising in stereo complaint. Mave groaned. "Teething again." "I'll get them." "No, we'll both get them." She stood, pulling him up with her. "Together. That's how we do everything now." "Together," he agreed. They went inside to tend to their daughters, and as Calder rubbed soothing gel on June's aching gums while Mave rocked Mira, he thought about how far they'd come. From that day in the general store when a stranger had offered to hold a crying baby to this moment, a family whole and healing and real. September came with cooler nights and the promise of fall. The garden produced its first harvest: tomatoes and beans and squash that Mave preserved and canned with the focused intensity she brought to everything. The twins turned 1 year old, and they celebrated with a small party. The Andersons came bringing cake. Reverend Thomas stopped by with wooden toys he'd carved. Even Mrs. Patterson showed up with a stiff smile and hand-knitted blankets. "For the girls," she said, thrusting them at Mave, "every child should have a proper blanket." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. They're beautiful." "Yes, well," the older woman softened slightly. "You're doing a fine job with them. Better than most would in your situation." It wasn't quite an apology for all the earlier judgment, but it was close enough. Mave accepted it with grace. That night, after everyone had left and the twins were asleep, Calder found Mave standing in the doorway of the girls' room watching them sleep. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That a year ago these two didn't have a mother, and now they have me." She leaned against him. "I know I'm not Lydia. I'll never be Lydia. But I pray that I'm enough." "You're more than enough. You're everything they need." "How do you know?" "Because they smile when they see you. Because they reach for you when they're hurt. Because you love them like they're yours even knowing they're not." He turned her to face him. "That's what makes you their mother, Mave. Not blood. Not biology. Love." Tears streamed down her face. "I love them so much it scares me sometimes." "Me too." They stood together in the doorway watching their daughters sleep, and Calder felt a peace settle over him that he'd never expected to feel again. This was his family, not the one he'd lost, but the one he'd found. Different, yes, but no less real, no less precious. A week later, Calder came in from the barn to find Mave sitting at the kitchen table, a letter in her hands and tears on her face. "What's wrong?" He crossed to her immediately. "Is it your family? Is someone hurt?" "No, nothing like that." She held up the letter. "It's from Thomas, Lydia's brother." Calder's stomach dropped. "What does he say?" "He's coming to visit. He wants to meet me, to see the twins." She looked up at him, fear in her eyes. "What if he hates me? What if he thinks I'm trying to replace his sister?" "He won't think that." "How do you know?" "Because he wrote to me after we married. Said he was happy I'd found someone. That Lydia would have wanted me to be happy." Calder took her hands. "He's a good man, Mave. He'll see how much you love those girls. How much you love me. He'll understand." "But what if—" "No what ifs. We'll deal with whatever comes, just like we always do. Together." She nodded, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. Thomas arrived 3 days later, a tall man with Lydia's dark hair and kind eyes. He looked older than his 30 years weathered by frontier life and personal loss. Calder greeted him at the door with handshakes and introductions. "Thomas, this is my wife Mave. Mrs. Boon." Thomas took off his hat. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Mr. Hollis, please come in." They settled in the main room, awkward and careful around each other. The twins were napping, giving them time to talk without distraction. Thomas accepted coffee and looked around the house with an expression Calder couldn't quite read. "It's different," Thomas said finally. "The house. It feels different." Mave tensed. "I've made some changes. The curtains, the paint." "It's brighter," Thomas interrupted. "Warmer. Lydia would have liked it." The tension in Mave's shoulders eased slightly. "Would she?" Mave asked quietly. "Would she have been angry that I'm here?" Thomas looked at her for a long moment. "Lydia was the most practical person I ever knew. She wouldn't have wanted Calder to spend his life alone, wouldn't have wanted those babies to grow up without a mother." He set down his coffee cup. "So no, she wouldn't have been angry. She would have been grateful." "How can you be sure?" "Because she told me. When she knew she was dying, she made me promise to make sure Calder didn't shut himself away. That he'd find someone to love those babies the way they deserved." Thomas's voice grew rough. "She'd have liked you, I think. You've got her no-nonsense way about you, her dedication to family." Mave started crying. Not delicate tears, but big, gulping sobs that shook her whole body. Calder moved to hold her, but Thomas got there first, pulling her into an awkward hug. "There now, none of that. You're doing her proud, taking care of her girls." "I'm trying," Mave managed. "I'm trying so hard to be worthy of them." "You already are." Thomas pulled back, his own eyes wet. "And anyone who says different will have to answer to me." The babies woke, then their voices rising from the bedroom. Mave wiped her eyes and went to get them. She returned with both twins, one on each hip, and Thomas's face crumpled at the sight of them. "They look just like her," he whispered. "They do," Calder agreed. "June especially has her expressions. Mira's got her thoughtful way. Can I hold one?" Mave handed him June, who studied this stranger with solemn curiosity before reaching out to grab his nose. Thomas laughed, a surprised, joyful sound. "Hello there, little one. I'm your Uncle Thomas." They spent the afternoon talking about Lydia, her quirks, her humor, her fierce love for Calder. Thomas shared stories from their childhood, and Mave listened with rapt attention, gathering pieces of the woman whose place she'd taken. "She wasn't perfect," Thomas said at one point. "Lord knows she could be stubborn. Drove our mother crazy with her insistence on doing things her own way." "She drove me crazy too sometimes," Calder admitted. "But I loved her for it." "As you should have." Thomas looked at Mave. "And I can see you love her too in your own way. The way you listen to these stories. The way you're trying to know her through us." "She's part of them," Mave said simply. "Part of this family. I want to honor that. You are, just by being here, just by loving them." Thomas stayed for 2 days, filling the house with laughter and memories. He taught Calder a card game Lydia had loved. He showed Mave photographs of Lydia as a child. He played with the twins until they were giddy with excitement. When it came time for him to leave, he hugged Mave tight. "Take care of them," he said. "All of them." "I will. And take care of yourself too. Don't lose yourself in being what everyone needs." "I'm trying not to." "Good." He released her and turned to Calder. "You've got yourself a good woman here. Don't screw it up." "I won't." "See that you don't." He swung into his saddle. "I'll be back next year. Try to have more stories to tell me." They waved goodbye until he disappeared down the road, then turned back to the house together. "That went better than I expected," Mave said. "Told you he'd understand." "You were right." She took his hand. "About a lot of things." Fall deepened into winter, and the ranch settled into the rhythm of cold months. Mave's garden lay dormant under frost, but the pantry was full of her preserved harvest. The twins grew bigger, more active, more vocal. June took her first steps in November, lurching across the kitchen into Mave's waiting arms. Mira followed 2 weeks later, more cautious but just as determined. "They're walking," Mave said with wonder and terror. "They're actually walking." "Better build higher shelves," Calder said. They celebrated Christmas with just the 4 of them, the house warm and bright with candles and evergreen branches. Mave had sewn new dresses for the girls and knitted Calder a thick scarf. He'd ordered her more books and built her a rocking chair for the porch. "For when you want to read outside," he explained. She kissed him long and deep while the twins played with their new wooden blocks. "Best Christmas I've ever had," she whispered. "First of many." As the year turned, Calder found himself thinking about time. How it healed and changed things. How a year ago he'd been drowning in grief, barely holding on. How Mave had appeared like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known to speak. One evening in late January, after the twins were asleep, he found Mave in their bedroom staring at Lydia's photograph on the dresser. "You should put it somewhere else," she said without turning around. "Somewhere the girls can see it as they grow up. In the main room, maybe." "You want Lydia's picture in the main room?" "She's their mother. They should know her face, her story." Mave turned to him. "And I'm not threatened by her anymore. I know who I am to you. To them, a photograph can't change that." Calder crossed to her, pulling her close. "When did you get so wise?" "When I married you." He laughed, recognizing his own words thrown back at him. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? The best pair." She kissed him. "Now move that photograph so those girls can grow up knowing they had 2 mothers who loved them." They hung the photograph in the main room the next day, right above the mantel where everyone could see it. Lydia smiled out at them, frozen in time, forever young and beautiful, and missed. But beside her photograph, Mave hung a mirror. A deliberate choice. The past and the present side by side. Neither erasing the other. Both necessary. Both loved. February brought the coldest snap Calder could remember. Snow piled high against the house, and they spent days huddled inside, keeping the fire roaring and the twins entertained. It was during one of these snowbound days that Mave made an announcement. "I think I'm pregnant." Calder dropped the log he'd been carrying. It hit the floor with a crash that made both twins startle. "You're what?" "Pregnant. Maybe. I'm not sure yet, but—" She touched her stomach. "I think so." He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. "Are you sure?" "Not completely, but all the signs are there." "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified. Excited. Overwhelmed." She laughed shakily. "How do you feel about it?" "The same. All of those things." He pressed his forehead to hers. "A baby. Our baby. If it's real. If I'm right." "You're usually right." She was right. By March, there was no doubt. Mave was pregnant, due sometime in October. The news spread through town with the usual mixture of congratulations and calculation. Some people counted on their fingers and nodded approvingly enough. Time had passed since the wedding. Others whispered that maybe this explained the rush to marry. Calder didn't care. He was going to be a father again, and this time he'd be awake for every moment. This time, there'd be no fever, no loss, no grief overshadowing joy. "Are you worried?" Mave asked one night, her hand on her still flat stomach. "About what?" "That history will repeat itself. That I'll—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "You won't." He said it with a certainty he didn't entirely feel. "You're strong and healthy. We'll get Doc Harrison involved early. We'll be careful." Lydia was careful. "I know, but lightning doesn't strike twice. Sometimes it does." He pulled her close, his hand covering hers on her stomach. "Then we'll face it together. But I truly believe you're going to be fine. That we're going to welcome a healthy baby and watch all 3 of our children grow up together." 3 children. She said it with wonder. "We're going to have 3 children. A whole houseful. Good thing I'm expanding the garden." The pregnancy progressed without incident. Mave bloomed with it, her face glowing, her body changing to accommodate new life. The twins seemed to sense something was different, becoming more protective of her. June would pat Mave's belly and babble. Mira would rest her head against it, listening. "They know," Mave said. "Somehow they know. Maybe. Or maybe they just love you." That too. Summer came again, hot and bright. The garden flourished under Mave's care, producing even more than the year before. The twins learned to talk, their vocabularies expanding daily. They called Mave Mama and Calder Papa. And if either of them noticed that there was no distinction between biological and chosen parents, they never mentioned it. October arrived with cool winds and changing leaves. Mave's belly was huge now, the baby active and strong. She was tired but happy, waddling around the house with good humor, while the twins helped by bringing her things and patting her feet. "Any day now," Doc Harrison said during his weekly visit. "Everything looks good. Baby's positioned right. You're healthy. I don't foresee any complications." "You didn't foresee them with Lydia either," Calder said quietly. "No, I didn't. But every birth is different. Every woman is different." The doctor packed up his bag. "I'll be ready when you need me." The labor started 3 days later in the early morning hours. Mave woke him with a hand on his shoulder and calm words. "It's time." Terror and excitement warred in Calder's chest. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Contractions started an hour ago. They're getting closer." He dressed quickly and rode to fetch Doc Harrison, leaving the still sleeping twins with Mrs. Anderson, who'd agreed to be on call. By the time he returned, Mave was pacing the bedroom, breathing through contractions, with the same focused determination she brought to everything. "How are you doing?" he asked. Been better, been worse. She gripped his hand as another contraction hit. Stay with me. Wouldn't be anywhere else. The labor was long. All day and into the evening, Mave worked while Calder held her hand and whispered encouragements. Doc Harrison monitored everything with calm efficiency, and finally, as the sun set, a new voice joined the household, loud and indignant and absolutely perfect. It's a boy, Doc Harrison announced, holding up the squalling infant. And he's got excellent lungs. Calder laughed, the sound close to a sob. A son. They had a son. Mave was crying and laughing too, reaching for the baby. Doc Harrison placed him in her arms, and she looked down at their child with so much love it hurt to witness. Hello, little one, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. The baby, their son, stopped crying at the sound of her voice. He blinked up at her with dark, unfocused eyes, and Calder fell in love all over again. With his wife, with his son, with this impossible life they'd built from grief and hope. What should we name him? Mave asked. Calder thought about it, about Lydia and the past, about Mave and the present, about this baby and the future. William, he said, after your father, if that's all right with you. Mave's eyes filled with fresh tears. William Boon. I love it. They brought the twins in to meet their brother later that evening. June was fascinated, touching his tiny hands with wonder. Mira was more cautious, hanging back until Mave assured her the baby was safe. This is William, Mave told them. Your baby brother. Baby, June repeated solemnly. Brother, Mira echoed. They all piled onto the bed together, Calder, Mave, June, Mira, and tiny William, a family, whole and real, and earned through pain and persistence and love. We did it. Mave whispered, her head on Calder's shoulder. We did. I was so scared. I know. Me too. But we're okay. We're all okay. We're more than okay. He kissed her temple. We're happy. And they were. In that moment, with his family safe and whole around him, Calder Boon was happier than he'd ever thought possible. The grief hadn't disappeared, it never would. But it had made room for joy, for love, for a future that honored the past without being trapped by it. Outside, stars filled the sky. Inside, a family slept 3 children, 2 parents, 1 home built from broken pieces and second chances. The story could have ended in tragedy. The widower drowning in grief. The children growing up without love. The ranch falling into ruin. But it didn't. Because one day a stranger in a general store whispered 6 words that changed everything. Would you like me to hold one? And in accepting that help, in choosing hope over isolation, in building something new from the ashes of loss, Calder and Mave had created something beautiful, something lasting, something worth fighting for. They'd proven that love doesn't run out, that families can be built as well as born, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone help carry your burden. And in the end, that made all the difference.